Khalid Al-Fayed barely glanced up when the waitress approached his table at Cafe Layla. He was in the middle of a heated phone call with his business partner, discussing a multi-million-dollar deal in rapid Arabic. Frustrated, he gestured impatiently for his coffee. Black, no sugar, as always. Layla set the cup down gently, but in his agitation, Khalid knocked it with his elbow. Hot coffee splashed across his expensive Italian suit. He cursed under his breath in Arabic, muttering words he assumed no one around them would understand. These people can't do anything right. Probably never seen real money in their lives. Without missing a beat, Layla handed him a napkin and replied in flawless, eloquent Arabic, the formal dialect spoken in royal courts, not the street Arabic he'd used. Perhaps if you weren't so distracted by your millions, you'd notice the people actually working for theirs. Khalid froze, his phone call forgotten. His eyes met hers for the first time, really met them, and he saw not embarrassment or apology, but quiet dignity and unmistakable intelligence. The cafe seemed to fall silent around them, though the lunch rush continued its chaotic symphony. Something shifted in that moment, something neither of them could name but both of them felt. Layla Mansour wasn't supposed to be serving coffee in a cramped Dubai cafe. With a degree in international business from the American University of Sharjah and fluency in 4 languages, including the classical Arabic she'd studied alongside her grandmother, she had once envisioned a very different life. She'd dreamed of boardrooms and international negotiations, of making her family proud in ways that transcended mere survival. But life had other plans. When her father collapsed at his construction job 3 years ago, the medical bills arrived like a tsunami, drowning every dream she'd carefully built. Her younger brother, Ahmed, had just received his acceptance letter to university, his ticket out of their struggling neighborhood. Her mother worked herself to exhaustion at 2 cleaning jobs, her hands raw and aged beyond her years. Someone had to hold the family together. Someone had to sacrifice. That someone was Layla. She'd been working at Cafe Layla for 2 years now, enduring the condescension of wealthy clients who saw her uniform and assumed ignorance. She'd learned to make herself invisible, to smile through the dismissive comments and wandering hands, to swallow her pride with every sweetheart and darling thrown her way by men who wouldn't last a day in her shoes. Most days, she let their comments slide off her back like water off marble. But something about Khalid Al-Fayed's careless arrogance that afternoon struck a nerve she didn't know was still raw. Maybe it was the exhaustion from her mother's hospital visit that morning. Maybe it was the rejection letter from yet another corporate job sitting in her bag. Or maybe it was simply that she was tired, so desperately tired, of being invisible. She didn't know who he was then, didn't recognize the face plastered across business magazines as the heir to the Al-Fayed empire, the young prince of Arabian wealth whose family's influence stretched from Dubai to London to New York. All she saw was another entitled man who thought money made him superior, who could spill coffee and blame the help, who could insult people in a language he assumed they were too simple to understand. What Layla didn't expect was for him to return the next day. Khalid walked into Cafe Layla at exactly 2:47 p.m., the same time as yesterday. But this time, he wants on his phone. This time, he waited patiently in line like everyone else. And when he reached the counter where Layla stood, her expression carefully neutral, he did something that shocked her. He apologized. Not in English, not in the casual Arabic of the streets, but in the same formal, classical Arabic she'd used, the language of respect, of education, of equals. "I was wrong yesterday," he said, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "My words were beneath you, beneath anyone. I'm sorry." Layla studied him, searching for the smirk, the condescension, the inevitable punchline. But she found none. Only genuine remorse and something else. Curiosity, perhaps. Interest. "Your Arabic," he continued, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Where did you learn it?" "My grandmother," Layla replied, her guard still firmly in place. "She believed that language was power, that if you could speak like royalty, you could think like royalty, even if you'd never be treated like it." Something flickered across Khalid's face, recognition maybe, or understanding. "She sounds wise." She was. Layla's voice softened despite herself. "She passed away last year. I'm sorry." And he meant it. She could hear it in his voice, see it in the way his expression shifted from curiosity to genuine sympathy. That's when it started. Not with fireworks or dramatic declarations, but with a simple conversation between two people who should have remained strangers. Khalid ordered his coffee, black, no sugar, and sat at the corner table. But this time, during her break, Layla found herself sitting across from him. He asked about her studies. She asked about his work. He told her about the suffocation of family expectations, the weight of a future designed before he was born. She told him about her father's accident, her brother's dreams, the life she'd put on hold so others could move forward. They talked until her break ended, and then Khalid stayed until closing time, nursing cold coffee and watching her work with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. The next day, he returned, and the day after that. Each visit brought deeper conversations, longer glances, and a connection neither of them could explain, but both were powerless to resist. By the third week, Khalid found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. His doubts about the arranged marriage his mother was orchestrating, his dreams of building something meaningful rather than just inheriting an empire, his loneliness, despite being surrounded by people every moment of his life. Layla, despite every warning her mind screamed, began to see beyond the designer suits and inherited wealth to the man struggling beneath. A man who was just as trapped as she was, just in a different kind of cage. But neither of them realized that Khalid's mother had already noticed his frequent visits to the cafe. She'd had him followed, photographed, investigated, and she was not pleased. The storm was coming. They just didn't know it yet. 3 weeks turned into a month, and Khalid's afternoon visits to Cafe Layla became as routine as breathing. He'd rearranged board meetings, delayed conference calls, and invented excuses to escape his glass tower office. All for stolen moments with a woman who served coffee for a living. The irony wasn't lost on him. On a particularly quiet Thursday afternoon, rain drumming against the cafe windows, Khalid sat at his usual corner table while Layla wiped down the counter. The lunch rush had passed, leaving them in a rare pocket of solitude. "Tell me something," Khalid said, watching her work with that same intensity that had become familiar between them. "If money wasn't an issue, what would you do? Right now, today." Layla paused, her cloth hovering over the marble surface. No one had asked her that in years. Dreams felt like luxuries she couldn't afford. "I'd go back to school," she said finally, her voice soft but certain. Get my master's degree. Maybe work in international trade or diplomacy. I used to imagine myself negotiating deals between countries, building bridges instead of just serving coffee across them. Used to? Khalid leaned forward. You still can. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. With what money? What time? My father needs his medications. Ahmed's tuition is due next month. My mother... Her voice cracked slightly. My mother is working herself into an early grave, and I'm the only thing standing between my family and complete collapse. Dreams are for people who can afford them, Khalid. The way she said his name, without the formal titles, without the reverence everyone else used, made his chest tighten. To her, he wasn't the Al-Fayed heir. He was just Khalid. And somehow, that meant everything. I understand more than you think, he said quietly. Different cage, same trap. Layla looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. Tell me. So he did. He told her about the arranged marriage his mother was orchestrating with the daughter of a Saudi oil magnate, about the business merger disguised as a wedding, about how his entire life had been a series of decisions made by everyone except him, about the suffocating weight of being born into a legacy he never asked for. At least you have choices, Layla said, but her tone was gentle, not accusatory. You could walk away. Could I? Khalid's jaw tightened. And do what? Lose everything? My family would disown me. The business, the money, the name, all of it gone. I'd be nobody. You'd be yourself, Layla countered. Isn't that worth something? The question hung between them like a challenge, like a promise, like a dangerous possibility neither of them was ready to name. Khalid reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. When I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time in my life. Do you know how terrifying that is? Layla's breath caught. She should pull away, should remind him of the impossible distance between their worlds, should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak looming on the horizon. Instead, she closed the gap, her fingers brushing against his. Terrifying, she whispered, but maybe worth it. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. Inside, two people from different worlds sat hand in hand, both knowing they were falling towards something beautiful and devastating, and neither of them strong enough to stop it. The summons came on a Friday evening, delivered by his father's personal assistant with the kind of formality that meant this wasn't a request. Khalid sat across from his parents in their palatial dining room, the table long enough to seat 20 but set for only 3, a deliberate choice that made the space feel even more isolating. His mother, Amira Al-Fayed, sat with the posture of a woman who'd never slouched a day in her life. Every hair in place, every piece of jewelry strategically chosen, every word carefully measured. She'd built her life on perfection and expected nothing less from her only son. The Al-Rashid family has accepted our proposal, she announced, her tone suggesting she was discussing a successful business acquisition rather than her son's future. Yasmin is a lovely girl, educated in Switzerland, fluent in 5 languages, and her father's oil connections will secure our expansion into the Saudi market. The engagement will be announced next month. Khalid's grip tightened on his water glass. You didn't think to ask me first? His father, Hassan Al-Fayed, finally looked up from his phone. He was a man who'd built an empire through ruthless calculation and strategic alliances, and he viewed his son's life through the same lens. Ask you? This isn't a negotiation, Khalid. This is your duty, your responsibility to this family and everything we've built. I haven't even met her, Khalid said, his voice strained. You'll meet her at the charity gala next week, his mother replied smoothly. I've already had your schedule cleared. You'll sit beside her at dinner, dance with her, and make a good impression. The photographers will be there naturally. Naturally. The word tasted bitter on Khalid's tongue. His mother's eyes narrowed, that predatory instinct that had made her a force in Dubai's social circles. You've been distracted lately, missing meetings, disappearing for hours. Your father and I are concerned. Khalid's blood ran cold. How much did they know? I'm handling my responsibilities, he said carefully. See that you continue to, his father said, his tone brooking no argument. The Al-Rashid merger is worth $300 million. Your personal preferences are irrelevant compared to what's at stake. You'll marry Yasmin, you'll produce heirs, and you'll take your place in this family. End of discussion. The dismissal was clear. Khalid left the dining room feeling like the walls were closing in, the air too thin to breathe. He drove aimlessly through Dubai's glittering streets until he found himself at Omar's apartment. His childhood friend and the closest thing he had to a confidant opened the door, took one look at Khalid's face, and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. They've arranged my marriage, Khalid said flatly. Next month. Omar whistled low. To the Al-Rashid girl? I don't even know her, Omar. I don't love her. He stopped, the words catching in his throat. You love someone else. It wasn't a question. Khalid's silence was answer enough. Omar leaned back, studying his friend. Then what are you doing here? If you love her, fight for her. Walk away from all of this. And lose everything? My family? My name? My future? Your future? Omar's laugh was sharp. Brother, that's not your future. That's theirs. The question is, are you brave enough to build your own? Khalid stared into his glass, seeing Layla's face reflected in the amber liquid. Her smile, her strength, the way she'd looked at him when their hands touched. He didn't have an answer. Not yet. But the clock was ticking. Khalid chose a restaurant on the outskirts of Dubai, far from the glittering downtown towers where his family's friends dined and gossiped. It was elegant but discreet, the kind of place where privacy was valued more than being seen. He'd reserved a corner table, partially hidden by silk curtains and potted palms. Layla arrived in a simple black dress that somehow made her more stunning than any of the designer-clad women Khalid had ever known. But as she slid into her seat, she noticed the way his eyes darted toward the entrance, the tension in his shoulders, the careful angle of his chair that kept his face turned away from the main dining room. Are you ashamed of me? The question came out softer than she'd intended, but it landed between them like a stone. What? No. Khalid's response was immediate, almost desperate. Layla, no, never. Then why does it feel like we're hiding? Because they were. Khalid knew it, and apparently so did she. He'd been careful. No social media posts, no public places, no chance encounters with anyone from his world. He'd told himself it was to protect her, to keep her away from the vicious scrutiny of Dubai's elite. But sitting here now, watching the hurt flicker across her face, he realized he'd been protecting himself, too. "It's complicated," he said finally, the words feeling pathetically inadequate. "Complicated." Layla set down her menu, her gaze steady and unflinching. "That's what people say when they're too afraid to tell the truth. What's really going on, Khalid?" The waiter appeared with wine, and Khalid waited until they were alone again before speaking. When he did, the words came out in a rush, like a dam finally breaking. "My parents have arranged my marriage to a woman I've never met. The engagement announcement is next month, and there's a $300 million business deal attached to it. If I refuse, I lose everything. My family, my inheritance, my place in the company, everything I've ever known." Layla absorbed this in silence, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but edged with something sharp. "And where do I fit into this plan?" "I don't know." The admission felt like failure. "I just know that when I'm with you, I feel alive for the first time in my life. But I also know that choosing you means destroying everything my family has built, disappointing everyone who's ever believed in me. So, I'm a complication." Layla's laugh was hollow. "A pleasant distraction before you go back to your real life." "That's not fair, isn't it?" She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made his chest ache. "You want me to be understanding while you figure out whether I'm worth the sacrifice. But here's what you're not understanding, Khalid. I'm not a choice you get to make when it's convenient. I'm not something you can keep hidden in the shadows while you play the dutiful son." "Layla, no, listen to me." Her voice softened, but the steel remained. "You're so afraid of disappointing your family that you've never stopped to ask yourself what you actually want. You've let them design your entire life, and now you're angry that the design doesn't fit. But you're the only one who can change it. It's not that simple. It never is." Layla reached across the table, her hand covering his. "But you have to decide, Khalid. Are you going to live your life? Or are you going to let them live it for you? Because I won't be your secret. I won't be the woman you hide while you marry someone else. I deserve more than that." "You deserve everything," Khalid whispered, his throat tight. "Then give me honesty. Give me courage. Give me a man who's willing to fight for what he wants, even if it costs him everything." The challenge hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Khalid looked at her, this brilliant, fierce woman who'd somehow seen past his wealth to the person trapped beneath, and felt something shift inside him. He didn't have the answer yet, but for the first time, he knew what the question was. Khalid knew it was a mistake the moment he pulled up to his family's estate with Layla beside him. But after their conversation at the restaurant, after her challenge to choose courage over comfort, he'd convinced himself that honesty was the answer. That if his parents just met her, just saw what he saw, they'd understand. He'd never been more wrong. His mother received them in the formal sitting room, a space designed to intimidate with its soaring ceilings and priceless art. She didn't stand when they entered, didn't smile. Her eyes swept over Layla with the clinical precision of someone appraising merchandise and finding it defective. "So you're the waitress," Amira said, the word dripping with disdain. "I'm Layla Mansour." Layla extended her hand, her voice steady despite the hostility radiating from Khalid's mother. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Amira ignored the outstretched hand. "Tell me, Miss Mansour, what exactly are your intentions with my son?" "Mother," Khalid started, but his father's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Let her answer." Hassan Al-Fayed stood by the window, his back to them, as if Layla wasn't worth facing directly. Layla lifted her chin, and Khalid saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had first captivated him. "I care about your son, deeply, and I believe he cares about me." "Care," Amira laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "How touching. And tell me, where did you study? What family do you come from? What could you possibly offer the Al-Fayed legacy besides a scandal?" "I have a degree in international business from a U.S., Layla said, her composure remarkable under the assault. "My family may not have wealth, but we have integrity. And I've never asked Khalid for anything except honesty." "Integrity doesn't negotiate oil contracts," Hassan said, finally turning to face them. His gaze settled on Khalid, cold and disappointed. "This is what you've been wasting your time on? A girl who serves coffee?" "She's not!" Khalid's voice rose, anger flooding through him. "She's educated, intelligent, and worth 10 of the people you want me to associate with." "She's beneath you," Amira snapped, standing now, her fury barely contained. "And if you continue this foolishness, you'll be beneath us too. Is that what you want, Khalid? To throw away your inheritance, your future, your family name for some romantic fantasy?" "It's not a fantasy. I love her." The words hung in the air, the first time he'd said them aloud. Layla's sharp intake of breath told him she'd heard, but he couldn't look at her. Not now. Not while his mother's face twisted with rage. "Then you're a fool," Amira said coldly. "And fools have no place in this family. Choose, Khalid, her or us. But know that if you choose her, you lose everything. Your trust fund, your position in the company, your name. You'll be cut off completely. Is she worth that?" Khalid felt the walls closing in, the weight of generations pressing down on his shoulders. He looked at Layla, saw the pain in her eyes, the understanding that she was the cause of this fracture. "Don't," Layla whispered, reading his hesitation. "Don't sacrifice everything for me." But that was exactly what his mother was counting on. The drive back was silent, suffocating. When Khalid finally pulled up to Layla's apartment, she turned to him with tears streaming down her face. "We can't do this," she said. "I won't be the reason you lose your family." "Layla, let me go, Khalid. Please. It's the kindest thing you can do." She left before he could respond, disappearing into her building while he sat frozen in his car, torn between two impossible choices. For 3 days he tried to stay away. For 3 days he failed. Because some connections, once forged, can't be broken, even when they should be. The breaking point came at the charity gala. Surrounded by Dubai's elite in their diamonds and designer gowns, Khalid stood beside Yasmin Al-Rashid, a perfectly pleasant woman he felt absolutely nothing for, while his mother orchestrated their introduction to every influential family in the room. Each handshake felt like a shackle, each congratulation on their upcoming engagement Another nail in a coffin he hadn't agreed to lie in. When Yasmin excused herself to powder her nose, his mother leaned in close, her smile razor sharp. "See how easy this is? How right? Forget that waitress, Khalid. This is your destiny." Something inside him snapped. "No," he said quietly. "It's yours." He left the gala without explanation, ignoring his mother's furious calls, and drove straight to his parents' estate. He'd spent 3 days trying to convince himself he could live without Layla. 3 days of misery that had clarified everything. Some cages were meant to be broken, even if it meant bleeding in the process. His parents were waiting when he arrived, his mother still in her gala gown, his father's face carved from stone. "How dare you embarrass us like that?" Amira hissed. "The Al-Rashids are furious. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know exactly what I've done," Khalid said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I don't love Yasmin. I'll never love her, and I won't marry her." "You'll do as you're told. No." The word came out stronger this time, final. "I won't. I'm done living the life you designed for me. I'm choosing Layla." His mother's face went white with rage. "Then you're choosing poverty, obscurity. You'll have nothing." "I'll have myself," Khalid said, and felt the truth of it settle into his bones. "I'll have my freedom. And I'll have a woman who loves me for who I am, not what I'm worth." "You're throwing away an empire for a waitress," his father said, speaking for the first time. His disappointment was worse than his mother's anger. "I thought I raised you better than this. You raised me to value tradition over truth, duty over happiness. Maybe that worked for you, but it's killing me." Khalid's voice cracked. "I love her, and I'm not going to apologize for that anymore." "Then leave," Amira said coldly. "Leave this house, leave this family, and don't come back. You're no son of mine." The words should have devastated him. Instead, Khalid felt something like relief. He looked at his parents, these people who'd given him everything except the freedom to choose, and realized he'd been saying goodbye to them for weeks. "I'm sorry I couldn't be who you wanted," he said quietly. "But I have to be who I am." He walked out of the estate with nothing but his car keys and his phone, leaving behind a lifetime of expectations and a future that had never truly been his. Layla opened her apartment door at midnight to find Khalid standing there, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes red but clear. "I chose you," he said simply. "I chose us. They've cut me off completely, and I have no idea what happens next, but I can't live without you." Layla's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Khalid, what have you done?" "What I should have done weeks ago." He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "I know you're scared. I'm terrified. But we'll figure it out together, if you'll have me." She pulled him inside, holding him as he finally let himself break, the weight of his choice crashing over him. She was scared, terrified of what his sacrifice meant, of the responsibility of being worth such a loss. But as she held him, feeling his heart beat against hers, she knew one truth with absolute certainty. Some love was worth burning the world down for, even if you had to rebuild it from the ashes. The reality of Khalid's choice hit Layla 3 days later, when she watched him search for apartments on his laptop in her cramped living room. He'd been staying on her couch, his designer suits looking absurd draped over her secondhand furniture, his entire life reduced to 2 suitcases and a frozen bank account. He smiled when he caught her watching, but she saw the strain around his eyes, the way his hand trembled slightly as he scrolled through listings he could no longer afford. This man who'd never worried about money in his life was now calculating whether he could afford a studio in a neighborhood his family would have called dangerous. Because of her. "Khalid," she said softly, her heart breaking with every word she was about to say. "We need to talk." Something in her tone made him close the laptop. "That sounds ominous." Layla sat beside him, taking his hands in hers, memorizing the feel of them because she knew what came next would destroy them both. "I can't do this. I can't be the reason you lose everything." "You're not." "I am." Her voice cracked. "Look at you. 3 days ago you had an empire. Now you're looking at apartments you can't afford, cut off from your family, your future gone. And for what? For me? A waitress who can barely keep my own family afloat?" "For us," Khalid insisted, gripping her hands tighter. "Layla, I made this choice with my eyes open. I don't regret it." "You will." Tears streamed down her face. "Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually you'll wake up and resent me. You'll see everything you gave up and wonder if I was worth it. And I won't wait for that day to come." "That will never happen." "You don't know that!" She pulled away, standing, needing distance before her resolve crumbled completely. "You've never lived without money, Khalid. You've never worried about rent or medical bills or whether you can afford to eat. You think love is enough, but it's not. Not when reality sets in. Not when you're struggling and exhausted and remembering the life you used to have." Khalid stood too, his face pale but determined. "So what are you saying? That we should just give up?" "I'm saying you should go back." The words tasted like poison. "Go to your parents, apologize, marry Yasmin, and live the life you were meant to live. You deserve comfort and security and a future that doesn't involve struggling to survive." "I deserve you," Khalid said fiercely. "And you deserve someone who fights for you, not someone who runs back to mommy and daddy when things get hard." "I deserve someone who doesn't have to sacrifice everything to be with me." Layla's voice rose, years of insecurity and self-doubt pouring out. "Don't you see? I'm not worth this. I'm not worth your family, your inheritance, your entire future. I'm just a girl who serves coffee, and you were a prince. Our worlds were never meant to collide. But they did." Khalid closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "They did collide, Layla, and I'm not going back. I can't. Because loving you showed me who I really am, not who they wanted me to be." "Khalid, please." "No. You don't get to make this decision for both of us. You don't get to push me away because you're scared." His voice softened, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I'm scared too. Terrified. But I'd rather face uncertainty with you than certainty without you." Layla closed her eyes, wanting desperately to believe him, to trust that love could conquer the impossible distance between their worlds. But fear was a powerful thing, and it whispered that she was being selfish, that loving him meant letting him go. "I need time," she whispered, I need to think. She saw the hurt flash across his face, but he nodded, stepping back. Okay, take all the time you need. But they both knew that time wouldn't change the fundamental truth. Sometimes love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between two different worlds. Sometimes it just made the fall hurt more. Amira Al-Fayed arrived at Cafe Layla on a Tuesday morning. Her presence so out of place among the working-class clientele that conversation stopped mid-sentence. She wore a cream Chanel suit and carried herself like royalty slumming in the provinces, her disgust barely concealed as she approached the counter where Layla stood frozen. "We need to talk," Amira said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Privately." Layla's manager, sensing the tension, nodded permission. They sat at a corner table, the same one where Khalid had spent countless afternoons, and Amira slid an envelope across the scarred surface. "Open it," she commanded. Inside was a check. Layla's hands trembled as she read the amount. 2 million dirhams. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes of serving coffee. "That's enough to pay off your father's medical debts, put your brother through university, and set your mother up comfortably for the rest of her life," Amira said, her voice clinical. "There's also a job offer from one of our partner companies in London. Full relocation package, generous salary, career advancement opportunities. Everything you've ever dreamed of." Layla's throat tightened. In exchange for what? You know what? Amira's eyes were cold, calculating. "You disappear from my son's life. Completely. No contact, no explanations, no dramatic goodbyes. You take this money, solve all your problems, and let Khalid return to his real life." The temptation was a physical thing, wrapping around Layla's chest like a vice. She thought of her mother's exhausted face, her father's mounting medical bills, Ahmed's dreams of becoming an engineer. This money could save them all, could give her the future she'd sacrificed years ago. All it would cost was Khalid. "He's miserable without his family," Amira continued, sensing weakness. "He's too proud to admit it, but he's drowning. Every day he stays with you, he loses more of himself. Is that what you want? To watch him struggle and suffer because of your selfishness?" "I'm not," Layla's voice broke. "Aren't you?" Amira leaned forward, her perfume expensive and suffocating. "You know you're not right for him. You know this relationship is destroying his future. If you truly loved my son, you'd let him go. You'd take this money and give him back his life." Layla stared at the check, seeing everything it represented. Security, freedom, the ability to stop struggling, stop sacrificing, stop being afraid. Her family would be saved. Her dreams could be resurrected. All she had to do was walk away from the one person who'd ever made her feel truly seen. "I need to think," she whispered. "You have 24 hours. Amira stood, smoothing her suit. "After that, the offer expires. Choose wisely, Miss Mansour. Some opportunities only come once." That night, Layla sat in her apartment with the check on the table, staring at it until the numbers blurred. She thought about Khalid's smile, his courage, the way he'd sacrificed everything for her. She thought about her family's struggles, the weight she'd carried alone for so long. She thought about what love actually meant. At midnight, she picked up her phone and called Khalid. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough with sleep and worry. "I need to see you," she said. "Now." When he arrived 20 minutes later, breathless and terrified, she handed him the check, watched his face go pale as he read the amount, understanding immediately what it meant. "She came to you," he said flatly. "Yes." Layla took the check from his hands and, without hesitation, tore it into pieces. "And I'm saying no. To the money, to the job, to all of it. Because you were right. I was scared. Scared of not being enough, of ruining your life, of failing. But I'm more scared of living without you." Khalid pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shaking. "Are you sure? Layla, that money could have bought me everything except what matters," she finished. "I don't want their money. I don't want the easy way out. I want you. I want us. And I'm ready to fight for it." He kissed her then, desperate and relieved, and Layla knew she'd made the right choice. Some things couldn't be bought. Some love was worth more than comfort, even if the battle ahead would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The final ultimatum came through Hassan Al-Fayed himself. He called Khalid to meet him at his office, neutral ground, away from Amira's fury. When Khalid arrived, his father looked older somehow, the weight of disappointment aging him in ways wealth couldn't prevent. "Your mother tried her way," Hassan said without preamble. "Now I'll try mine. Come back, Khalid. Marry Yasmin, take your place in the company, and we'll forget this ever happened. You'll have everything back, your position, your inheritance, your family." "And Layla?" Khalid asked, though he already knew the answer. "Is not part of this equation." Hassan's voice was firm but not unkind. "Son, I understand infatuation. But love doesn't pay bills. It doesn't build empires. You're throwing away a legacy for a feeling that will fade." Khalid looked at his father. This man who'd built an empire, but never understood that some things were worth more than kingdoms. "It's not infatuation, Father, and it won't fade. I know because I've tried. I've spent weeks trying to convince myself I could live without her. And I can't. I won't." "Then you're choosing to be cut off. Permanently." Hassan's jaw tightened. "No trust fund, no company position, no family support. You'll be on your own." "I know." Khalid stood, feeling lighter than he had in months. "And I'm okay with that. Because I'd rather build something real with Layla than inherit something hollow without her." Hassan said nothing as Khalid walked out, but for just a moment, something flickered in the old man's eyes. Respect, perhaps, or regret for the son he'd never truly known. 6 months later, Khalid and Layla stood in front of their small business, a consulting firm that combined his business acumen with her linguistic skills and cultural knowledge. It wasn't an empire. The office was modest, the clients still building, the profits barely enough to cover expenses. But it was theirs. Khalid had taken a loan, leveraged the few assets his parents couldn't touch, and worked 18-hour days to prove he could succeed on his own terms. Layla had quit the cafe, her father's medical bills finally manageable through a payment plan. Ahmed thriving at university on a scholarship she'd helped him secure. They were exhausted. They were struggling. They were happy. "Any regrets?" Layla asked one evening as they locked up the office, her hand finding his. Khalid pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Not a single one. The reconciliation with his parents came a year later, tentative and fragile. Hassan showed up at their office unannounced, his pride finally cracking enough to see what his son had built. He didn't apologize. Men like Hassan Al-Fayed rarely did. But he offered something more valuable. Acknowledgement. "You've done well," he said simply, looking around the modest but professional space. "Better than I expected." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't acceptance of Layla, not fully. But it was a beginning. Amira took longer, her pride a harder fortress to breach. But when Layla and Khalid married in a simple ceremony, no society photographers, no political alliances, just two people choosing each other, she sent a gift. A small gesture, but one that spoke of possibilities. Their relationship would never be what it was. The trust was broken, the expectations shattered. But perhaps, in time, they could build something new, something honest. On their wedding night, as they stood on the balcony of their small apartment overlooking Dubai's glittering skyline, Khalid wrapped his arms around Layla and whispered the truth they'd both learned. "You were right that night at the restaurant," he said. "I had to choose my own path. And every day, I choose you. Every day, I choose us." Layla turned in his arms, her eyes bright with tears and joy. "We chose each other, and we'll keep choosing each other, no matter what comes." Below them, the city sparkled with wealth and power and all the things Khalid had walked away from. But up here, in this moment, with this woman, he had everything that mattered. He had love. He had freedom. He had himself. And that was worth more than any empire. 3 years after walking away from the Al-Fayed empire, Khalid stood in front of a ribbon stretched across glass doors, scissors in hand, and felt something he'd never experienced in his father's boardrooms. Pure, unfiltered pride. The sign above read Bridges in elegant Arabic and English script. A name Layla had chosen because that's what they were building. Bridges between cultures, between classes, between the Dubai of wealth and the Dubai of workers who made that wealth possible. Their concept was simple but revolutionary. A hospitality consulting firm that trained luxury establishments to treat every employee with dignity while teaching those same employees the skills to advance. Layla had designed the curriculum, drawing from her years at Cafe Layla and her linguistics degree. Khalid had secured the funding, called in favors from the few contacts who'd remain loyal, and built the business model that made it sustainable. It had taken 3 years of 18-hour days, rejected proposals, and nights when they'd eaten instant noodles and wondered if they'd made a terrible mistake. But they'd survived. More than that, they'd thrived. "Ready?" Layla asked, standing beside him in a professional dress that was worlds away from her waitress uniform, but somehow suited her even better. She was pregnant now, 4 months along, carrying the future they'd built together. Khalid looked at the crowd gathered for their grand opening. His father stood near the back, his presence a surprise that still made Khalid's chest tight. Hassan had invested in Bridges, not out of charity, but because the business plan was solid. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was progress. Amira hadn't come, but she'd sent flowers. Small steps. Omar stood front and center, grinning like a proud brother. Layla's family was there too. Her father healthy now, her mother beaming. Ahmed graduating next month with job offers already lined up. Ready, Khalid confirmed, and together they cut the ribbon. The applause was modest compared to the galas he'd once attended, but it meant infinitely more. These were people who'd believed in them, who'd watched them build something real from nothing but determination and love. That evening, after the last guest had left and they were alone in their new office, Layla found Khalid staring out the window at Dubai's skyline. The same view he'd had from his father's tower, but from a very different vantage point. Second thoughts? She teased, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Not even close. He turned, pulling her close, his hand resting on the small swell of her belly. I was just thinking about that day in the cafe, when you called me out in perfect Arabic and looked at me like I was the most entitled person you'd ever met. You were, Layla laughed. I was, he agreed. But you saw past it. You saw who I could be, not who I was supposed to be. And you gave me the courage to become that person. We gave each other courage, Layla corrected. I was so busy surviving that I'd forgotten how to dream. You reminded me. Khalid kissed her softly, tasting salt from happy tears, hers or his, he wasn't sure. Our child is going to grow up knowing they can choose their own path, that love matters more than legacy, that who you are is more important than what you inherit. And that sometimes, Layla added, her eyes sparkling, the best things in life come from a spilled cup of coffee and a perfectly timed insult. They laughed together, the sound echoing through their empty office, filling the space with possibility. Outside, Dubai glittered with the wealth Khalid had walked away from. But inside, surrounded by everything they'd built with their own hands, their own hearts, their own unshakable belief in each other, they had something far more valuable. They had a future written by their own choices, a love that had survived every test, and a business built on the radical idea that everyone, regardless of where they came from, deserved dignity, opportunity, and respect. Khalid had been born a prince, but he'd become something better, a man who chose love over luxury, courage over comfort, and partnership over power. And as he held Layla in the office of the business they'd built together, watching their dreams take shape in the city that had once seemed determined to keep them apart, Khalid knew one truth with absolute certainty. He'd made the right choice every single time. And that's the beautiful story of Khalid and Layla. A reminder that true love requires courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to choose your own path. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of love, courage, and transformation. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this journey, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done in Khalid's position? Have you ever had to choose between love and family expectations? What was your favorite moment in this story? Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Until next time, remember, the best life is the one you choose for yourself. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.